The film industry seems to be intent on revisiting old stories to make canonical changes and retcon well-established characters. We've seen this happen to movie franchises like Star Wars with its disastrous sequel trilogy, and standalone movies like Enola Holmes, which affect an entire legacy and twist and belittle the original characters people liked. Schisms in fandoms are being created, while politics is slowly weaving its way into entertainment. Where has the creativity gone? While I'm not opposed to expanding on the existing stories, more often than not, it ends up being a botched attempt at milking what's well established and liked till it's sucked dry. In this video, I'd like to focus on a specific problem related to this, and that's the portrayal of well-known villains as heroes, through following a simple scheme I decided to call the trauma evil justification triad. I'll tackle the phenomenon of the hero-villain exchange, masculinization of women, and reversal of values, all portrayed in Cruella, and explain the symbolism used in the movie. Emphasis on freedom and anarchy. Cruella is depicted as an odd, misunderstood girl since the very moment she's born. This represents an estrangement from others, which is at the same time the scourge of life, for which she rebels against it with all her might. She's encouraged by her mother figure to not adapt, to remain herself. But to draw the line between adaptation and individuality is a tricky and dangerous business. We need to learn to adapt, otherwise we can't function in the society. At the same time, however, we have to keep our individuality and bring out what's best in us. In Cruella, however, there's only emphasis placed on the latter, and the consequences of this are ignored. Cruella doesn't adapt. She ends up being a thief, which never leads to any repercussions, by the way, as the victimhood card displayed. A parasite on the society with big dreams and vision, but zero realization. In that sense, she remains a child, pure potential. It's always her acts of anarchy that propel her forward and reward her, which is in itself very far from reality and an attempt to devalue the cliché but true idea of hard work. For example, she gets the job for the Baroness only when she vandalizes the showcase of the boutique she works for, and becomes known only once she starts invading the Baroness's parties and vandalizing public property. Creativity is chaotic, but it's order that gives it its beneficial qualities and usefulness, which is never tackled in the movie. Cruella's achievements are built on chaos. Black and white symbolism. The symbolism of black and white here underlies the entire movie and explains very well what's going on. It's present in music video clips and movies both, and originated in ancient philosophies. Its most common depiction in entertainment is in the black and white checkered floor, which we can also see in the final scene of Cruella. The black and white symbolism is often simply explained as the representation of duality and balance between the light and the dark, but that's not what it usually means when used in the music and movie industry. It's important to understand that every symbolical depiction has a purpose. We have to look at how and when are these symbols used, and especially how they align with the overall narrative of the movie or the song. Most of the time, the checkered floor is treaded by the characters around which the overall plot is centered. This means dominance over the two forces by the given character. It's a symbolical, self-styled embodiment of God in the main personage, which represents the entity that rules over the duality and represents unity. This symbol is, in reality, not dual, but represents a triad: chaos, order, and that which rules over both and chooses it at its own will. This is exactly what we see in Emma Stone's character switching between Cruella and Estella. For this reason, it can be seen as a symbol of Lucifer, the light-bringer or light-taker, who styles himself in the position of God, that is, above the duality, instead of in the center of or amidst it. This is accentuated at the end of Cruella. She kills Estella, and her alter ego Cruella takes over her completely. She adopts the name Deville, calls her dwelling Hellhole, and names her card Devil. As she enters her new dwelling in the last scene, she's seen walking on the black and white checkered floor, followed by her dogs and henchmen. But this was only to be expected. We're told she was born that way. I mean, come on, her name is Estella von Hellman. This is a story of the victory of the evil over good. But don't worry, it's the lesser evil, the one you're supposed to sympathize with. The bigger has been vanquished. We are made to believe that we ought to sympathize with this tragic villain. But that would require the original story to be effaced. Cruella is an authentic villain in 101 Dalmatians. She wants to get them killed to use their fur, which she's obsessed with. She's mad and ruthless. Villains aren't heroes, and the past doesn't justify the present. That's why the stories of villains like Joker or Hannibal Lecter, for example, are told more effectively. Their backstories partially explain their present actions, but don't attempt to justify them, and we get to see the consequences of them. Cruella is never punished for her wrongdoings in the movie. Villain to hero and hero to villain conversion phenomenon. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who turn darkness to light and light to darkness, who replace bitter with sweet and sweet with bitter. The movie Maleficent is the paragon of this reversal phenomenon, where the traditional archetypal story of the Sleeping Beauty is completely spoiled and made into the story of degradation of the young spirit that's supposed to rise instead. In the original story, Aurora is cursed by Maleficent and protected by the third fairy, who minimizes the effect of the curse. The patriarchal figure of King Stephen, who embodies the order, and the archetypal hero Prince Philip, who embodies the rising new order, who revives the old order through Aurora, who's that which must be revived to keep the order alive. It's basically the consciousness that enters the darkness of the unconscious and conquers the chaos. That's the kiss of life given by the prince, who embodies the masculine consciousness that rises through the feminine unconscious, are completely diminished and switch places with Maleficent. Order is thus substituted by chaos, whose rule prevails and enchants the potential for the rise of consciousness to remain in the unconscious. This is done through the traumatic background leads to evil leads to justification pattern. As simple a move as conjuring the original hero's past misbehavior towards the now villain is used as the single most powerful handle to artificially make the villain likable and set him in the position of the hero. Look at the series Lucifer, for example. The very embodiment of pure evil is first the victim and then the hero, and this victimization, heroization of criminals, if they belong to a certain supposedly oppressed group, is taking place in the society itself. This all reflects this ongoing political and feminist agenda in the movies and series. So, a painful backstory is conjured to justify the actions of the malefactor. The characters that represent the good values are then depicted as causation of the painful backstory of the villain. Either directly, they caused it, or indirectly, they were inactive and that's why it happened. In Cruella's case, it's bizarrely the Dalmatians who kill her mother, which is supposed to explain her enmity towards the Dalmatians, which isn't depicted in the movie, however. Instead, it's the Baroness we're supposed to blame, but that doesn't explain why the future Cruella, who's obsessed with furs, wants to kill the Dalmatians. How does the Cruella that keeps the Dalmatians and gives their puppies to Anita and Roger get from here to the Cruella who wants to make a coat of their fur? Also, aren't these two supposed to be Anita and Roger? Throughout the movie, Cruella is portrayed as a dog lover. It simply doesn't make sense, as we're talking about a villain that was based on the wish to kill puppies. It's like creating a story about a Jedi-loving Palpatine. It doesn't make sense, just like the conversion of Maleficent, who in the new story saves Aurora, and it's King Stephen whom we should blame, for he, bizarrely enough, drugged and cut Maleficent's wings off, which is supposed to explain her enmity towards Aurora in the original story. It creates a different story with many discrepancies whose purpose is substitution of the hero by the villain. Rule of chaos over order. This is Disney. These stories are made mainly for children and gives them not what fairy tales are supposed to. This isn't good writing and moral education that aids integration into the society while promoting development of critical thinking anymore. It's all about political indoctrination. Fairy tales throughout centuries have always been about the battle between the good and the evil, between order and chaos. The victory of order, the qualities of virtue and chivalry, just and assertive spirit, has served us as a metaphor for what then morphed into religion, and that's the way to be a righteous human being capable of living in harmony with others. The ultimate goal of humanity, and that's what we've been attempting to do throughout history, although with many failures after all. The subversion of this traditional pattern is more pathological than it might at first seem. Teaching the next generations the values of a righteous human being is what assures a righteous society. Without this element, which appeals on its unawakened aspect in the unconscious of a developing child or a young adult, and is found in this form in fairy tales, we give way for chaos to overtake what holds the society together. Fairy tales are merely one part of this process we can see unfolding in the society already. Through politically correct education, social media censorship, repression of conservative values, victimhood and group identity politics, and so on. But as its main target has always been the very young audience, it represents the first step towards gradual degradation of order and emphasis on chaos. And this message can be found in Cruella as well. She's the embodiment of chaos and the self-styled prophet of the future. The Baroness represents the corrupted order which has to be substituted by the rise of new order. Cruella, however, embodies the contrary. She merely ends up taking the place of the Baroness. Masculinization of women and degradation of men. The modern radical feminist movement is advocating the idea of masculinization of women through their portrayal as the hero that can save everyone, is absolutely powerful with no faults or very minor ones, e.g. Wanda's Vision, Rey from Star Wars, and needs no men to help them out, and they're often depicted as utterly useless, subservient, bothersome, or evil. This all stems from utter misunderstanding of the original Beauty and the Beast trope, which is a symbolical representation of the process of feminine initiation into womanhood and masculine initiation into manhood. Through reversal of these well-established concepts, which, by the way, wound their way into fiction only because they reflect a psychological process that naturally undergo all humans, and where it fails, there arises immaturity and problems with functioning in the society. Psychological stagnation is being pushed as the new norm. And indeed, the numbers of man-babies and hysterical women are on the rise. While feminists are being more aggressive, books like The Boy Crisis surge along with higher rates of men dropping out of universities. Mutual relationships between men and women are worsening as well. Women are having a harder time finding a suitable, responsible partner, because females naturally seek masculine men. There's no way that masculine women and feminine men can function healthily together as the new norm, as it's absolutely contrary to our biological configuration. Why do you think women are so attracted to vampires, werewolves, and such characters in fiction? Marriages are becoming rarer, while divorce rate is strikingly upsetting. Men seek one-time encounters and don't start families. While masculine qualities in men are being scorned, they're being encouraged in women. Men are supposed to be more feminine. We end up being left with neither masculinity nor femininity. All we get is a postmodern melting pot of chaos. There are countless examples of this phenomenon, from Stranger Things to Captain Marvel, Enola Holmes, Harley Quinn, etc. I'm woman, hear me roar. That's what Estella styles as her motto when she goes to school for the first time. And of course she gets bullied by the white males, the symbol of the patriarchy, which she fights in rebellion, which leads to her getting expelled from the school. In another quite ridiculous scene, she fights all the Baroness' bodyguards alone with a walking stick and still wins. All the men in the movie are portrayed as obstacles, with one exception, and they're always servants and/or useless dolts, like the owner of the boutique, the guy with the glasses, Cruella's henchman, Roger, and so on. I enjoyed Emma Stone's acting and the fashion designs, but the story seems to be rather forgettable and superfluous. Another story of veneration of disorder, reusing of old material, and creation of discrepancies in the existing stories. Of course, stories about villains can be great. Villains can be likable, and it often is the case that they were shaped by traumatic experiences, but this doesn't justify their hunger for revenge. Their actions can't simply be wiped away. And what did you think about the film? Let me know in the comments. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to my channel and hit the bell button.